Billionaire forces his son to marry a homeless girl, but what he finds out shocks him. The sky above Los Angeles was a dull, bruised gray. Rain clung to the windows of the Hawthorne Tower like tears refusing to fall. Inside, on the 67th floor, the top floor reserved only for the ruling god of the empire, Richard Hawthorne, billionaire, mogul, and patriarch, stared out at the city he had conquered. Behind him, Ethan, his only son, leaned against the cold marble desk with arms crossed, jaw clenched. The silence between them wasn't just silence. It was a war waiting to explode. "I said no," Ethan repeated, his voice cool but trembling underneath. "I won't marry someone I don't love, especially not Savannah Pierce." Richard didn't turn around. His reflection in the glass was enough, a figure of power and pride, molded by years of conquest and cruelty. "You don't need to love her," Richard said without emotion. "You need to align with her. Pierce Holdings is sinking. A merger through marriage saves them and gives us their real estate network. You'd have leverage over half the West Coast." Ethan scoffed. "You're trying to buy a son-in-law, not build a family." Richard finally turned. His eyes, sharp and cold like cracked ice, drilled into Ethan's soul. "Family is business. Everything else is weakness. Or have you been so long in California, you've started believing in fairy tales?" Ethan stepped forward, his fists clenched. "I won't do it. Not for you. Not for the company. And not for some woman who only smiles when there's a camera in the room." Richard studied his son with a slow, calculating stare. Then, with terrifying calm, he sat down behind his massive oak desk and tapped a single finger on the glass surface. "You think you're rebelling, but really, you're just proving your immaturity. So here's a better idea." He leaned in, voice like poison honey. "Since you won't marry power, then marry the opposite." Ethan frowned. "What the hell are you talking about? Find someone who has nothing. No money, no legacy, no name. A woman with absolutely no value to the empire." Richard's eyes glinted. "Let's see how long your fairy tale lasts when reality eats you alive." There was a beat of silence. A pause so heavy it echoed. "You're insane," Ethan muttered, half laughing in disbelief. Richard leaned back in his chair and shrugged. "No, I'm a man of my word. Marry someone poor, someone irrelevant. If your love can survive 6 months in my world, I'll back off. I'll even give you your inheritance early." Ethan blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely. And if I refuse?" Richard's voice dropped. "Then you're not my son anymore." The words sliced through the air like a guillotine. Ethan didn't respond. His heart thundered. His pride roared. His blood screamed. But his face remained still. "Fine," he said, turning on his heel. "I'll find someone. Someone you wouldn't even look at twice." He stormed out, his footsteps echoing like the sound of war drums. Richard remained seated, unmoved, staring at the space Ethan had just left. "Let's see what love looks like," he whispered, "when it sleeps next to hunger." Outside, the rain finally began to fall. Meanwhile, across the city, underneath a flickering neon sign that read, "Diner, open 24/7, Sky Monroe wrapped her coat tighter around her shoulders. It was too thin for the rain, and even thinner for the night. She had been living on the streets for months. Ever since the shelter closed, and the last friend she trusted vanished without saying goodbye. She pressed her back against the side of the building and sank to the ground, her stomach hollow, her eyes wide but weary. She looked at the people inside the diner laughing, eating, living. Her reflection in the window stared back at her, dirty, tired, forgotten. Then she closed her eyes. But behind her eyelids, fire. Always fire. A child screaming. A woman yelling her name. "Lily. Lily, run." She gasped awake, shaking. She always did. Sky didn't know who Lily was. She didn't remember anything before age 10. All she knew was the dreams never stopped. And she always woke up cold. But something was coming. Something she couldn't imagine. The next morning, Ethan stepped out of his black SUV and looked around at the unfamiliar streets of Skid Row. The world here was made of cardboard and whispers. He didn't belong here, and it was obvious. A man in a $1,000 coat walking through desperation like it was scenery. He didn't know what he was looking for, until he saw her, sitting beneath a broken street lamp. So still, so silent, so different. He took a step forward, then another. She didn't move. She watched him approach, her eyes guarded but curious. "You got lost, suit?" she asked. Her voice was rough, but her tone held steel. I'm not here to rob you, Ethan replied. No, she said. You're here to be robbed. He laughed once, then knelt down. I'm here with a proposition. She blinked. A what? Marry me. The rain stopped. The city paused. Even her breath caught. What? I need a wife. For 6 months. You'll have a place to live. Clothes. Food. Money at the end. No sex. No pressure. Just the illusion. Sky stared at him, as if he'd just offered her the moon wrapped in a balm. You're crazy. Maybe. She studied him. His face was sincere. His jaw tight. His hands shaking slightly. Not from cold, but fear. He was just as desperate as she was. But for something else. What's the catch? She asked. My father. That bad. Worse. She stared into his eyes for a long time. And then, for the first time in months, she smiled. To hell with it, she whispered. Let's burn this illusion down together. Los Angeles didn't sleep. It watched. It watched from behind neon signs, flickering crosswalks, and dirty windows. It watched with cold curiosity as the forgotten ones drifted like shadows between alleys, buses, and corners where dreams came to die. And on one of those corners, beneath a rusting bus stop that no longer served any route, sat Sky Monroe. It was 11:42 p.m. She had one granola bar left, 2 crumpled bills in her boot, and a heart full of things she didn't understand. The wind blew colder than usual that night. Even LA had its bitter moods. Sky curled her arms around herself, her too thin coat barely covering her knees. Her duffel bag, her entire life, was beneath her, used as a cushion to keep her off the wet cement. She stared across the street at a 24-hour diner, glowing like some kind of cruel joke. Laughter floated out every time the door opened. She wasn't part of that world anymore. She wasn't sure she ever was. Behind her eyes, the fire flickered again. It always came back. The heat, the scream, the name, Lily. She shot upright, gasping, the echo of the name lost in the roar of a passing bus. She didn't know who Lily was. The name meant something. Everything. Nothing. It was a ghost word. Someone else's life. Someone she used to be. She ran a hand over the silver heart-shaped locket around her neck. It didn't open. It never had. The clasp was rusted shut, like a vault. Across the street, the door to the diner opened again. A man stepped out. Tall, dark coat, clean-shaven. He didn't belong here, and he was looking directly at her. Sky's instincts screamed. She tightened her grip on her bag and started to rise. But he crossed the street anyway. Calm, confident. His steps slow, deliberate. He stopped 3 feet away from her. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. His voice was low, careful, not threatening. That only made it worse. Too bad, she said flatly. I'd actually respect you more if you just said what you wanted. He smiled, but there was pain in it. You don't trust easily. No shit. I'm Ethan, he said, extending a hand. She stared at it like it was a trap. Didn't move. His hand dropped. Look, he said, lowering himself to sit on the sidewalk beside her, ignoring the dirt, the cold, the smell. I know this sounds insane, but I'm in a very specific situation. I need your help. She arched an eyebrow. You need help from me? Yes. You lost your mind? Probably. You lost a bet. No, then why are you here? With me? He paused. Because you're invisible to my world. That's what I need. Sky narrowed her eyes. What world is that? He looked straight ahead, his voice detached. Money. Legacy. Appearances. My father runs it all. Richard Hawthorne. CEO of Hawthorne Global. She blinked. Seriously? He nodded. You're that Ethan? Unfortunately. She didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. So let me guess. You need to make Daddy mad. Marry someone beneath you. Ruffle his perfect little empire. Something like that. She snorted. You rich kids are something else. I'm not here to disrespect you. I'm here because you're the only one he wouldn't see coming. She turned to him slowly, eyes sharp. What do you want from me? Marry me. Silence. Not traffic. Not breathing. Nothing. I'm sorry, what? Marry me, he repeated. For 6 months. Fake marriage. You'll have a place to live, food, new clothes. At the end of it, I'll pay you $200,000. No strings. No sex. No touching. Just pretend. In public. She stared at him like he was a ghost. You're serious? Yes. You're insane. Maybe. She looked away, heart pounding. She had slept under bridges, eaten out of trash cans, sold old shoes for food. And now this stranger was offering her more money than she'd ever imagined, for a lie. "I don't do lies," she whispered. "I don't either," he replied. "But sometimes we have to fake it to survive." Her throat tightened. "That's a nice quote. Put it on a mug." "I'm serious." "So am I." He stood slowly. "Think about it. I'll be at this corner tomorrow night. Same time. One word, and we start." She didn't look at him. He left without saying another word. The next day was the longest of her life. She tried to distract herself, scavenging, cleaning up at the public bathroom downtown, avoiding the gangs that claimed certain corners. But his offer hung in her mind like a siren song. Money, warmth, safety, dignity. But at what cost? By 11:40 p.m., she was back at the corner. She didn't know why. Maybe she was curious. Maybe she was desperate. Maybe she was ready. When Ethan appeared, she didn't look at him. "You're late," she said. He smiled. "I was hoping you'd be early." She still didn't face him. Her heart was a war zone. "I have rules," she said. "Name them." "No touching. No pet names. No sex." "Done. If this turns into something ugly, I walk." "Understood." She turned her face toward him, finally meeting his gaze. "Do I get a ring?" His smile softened. "You will." She nodded once. "Fine," she said. "Let's wreck your empire." The next few hours passed in a blur. Ethan put her in a clean motel near Westwood. He gave her a credit card. Clothes arrived. Shampoo, conditioner, soap. She hadn't seen a bathtub in months. When she emerged, hair wet, wearing a soft navy sweater and jeans that fit, she didn't recognize herself. Neither did he. "You look..." "Don't say beautiful," she snapped. "I wasn't going to. I was going to say powerful." She blinked. He meant it. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did he. In separate rooms, they lay in the dark, both pretending this was still just a deal. The ride to Hawthorne Manor was quiet. Skye stared out the window, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her borrowed sweater. The city lights passed in a blur, ghosts of a world that once forgot her. Now she was driving straight into the mouth of it. Next to her, Ethan didn't speak. He had changed into a sleek black jacket, his jaw set, his eyes focused forward like a soldier returning to enemy territory. There was something in him, stillness, coldness, but underneath that, something haunted. Skye didn't trust him. Not yet. But she did believe him when he said this house wasn't safe. The car pulled through the gates of Hawthorne Manor, and the sight made her stomach twist. The mansion rose like a castle, white stone, wrought iron balconies, a lawn so perfect it looked fake. It screamed wealth. It screamed power. It screamed you don't belong here. As the car came to a stop, two staff members opened the doors at once. Skye stepped out and immediately felt the cold wind of judgment. She knew that kind of wind. She'd felt it her whole life. But this time, she didn't flinch. She straightened her shoulders, held her bag tight to her chest, and walked in like she belonged, no matter what her boots looked like. Inside, the house was colder than outside. All glass and marble and impossible ceilings. The kind of house where whispers echoed and silence punished. A butler appeared without a sound and gestured for them to follow him. Ethan turned to her. "Whatever happens tonight, just breathe." "Is that your version of comfort?" she muttered. He gave her a glance. "I don't do comfort." "No kidding." They entered the grand dining room. The table stretched like a runway, gleaming under crystal chandeliers. Silverware aligned with military precision. Two people were already seated. One of them was Victoria Hawthorne. She was elegance weaponized, blonde hair perfectly styled, lips painted the color of war. She looked up from her wine glass with the expression of someone staring at roadkill on a white carpet. Skye locked eyes with her, held the stare. The other guest was a woman in a red dress with lips too perfect and eyes too sharp. Savannah Pierce, Ethan's ex-fiancée. Of course. "Oh, Ethan," Savannah said with a practiced smile, rising gracefully. "You brought your charity project." "Her name is Skye," he said. Victoria stayed seated. "She doesn't look like a Skye," she said coolly. "She looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen." Skye placed her bag down slowly by her chair and Saturday funny. "You look like a woman who needs a hobby." Ethan's mouth twitched. Just slightly. Savannah's smile sharpened. "How sweet." "She thinks sarcasm is a personality. Better than plastic and pearls," Skye said. The butler poured water into her glass. Skye nodded politely to him. He didn't meet her eyes. He'd been trained better than that. Victoria finally broke the silence. "This arrangement won't last, Ethan. You've embarrassed the family. Our name is now being whispered in every corner of the city, and not with respect. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Good. Let them whisper. You're playing with matches, she said. Don't be surprised when something burns. Isn't that your specialty, Victoria? He asked coldly. Burning things. There was a pause, just long enough to be dangerous. Then Savannah reached for her wine. So, Sky, tell me, what's it like, being elevated from the streets to society's highest table? Is it overwhelming? Sky stared at her, then smiled. Not really. Privilege doesn't impress me, especially when it comes with insecurity and desperation. Savannah blinked. Victoria said, Enough. But Sky wasn't done. You all think I'm here to take something. Like I crawled out of a gutter just to grab a seat at this table. But maybe you should be asking why I was in that gutter to begin with. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his eyes shifted. Later that night, after dinner, Sky walked alone down one of the many marble hallways. Her boots echoed with each step. A maid passed her without a glance. A portrait stared down at her from the wall, a painting of Richard Hawthorne, the man behind it all. His eyes were painted too perfectly, too cold. She found her room at the end of the West Wing. It was twice the size of the shelter she used to sleep in. Soft green wallpaper, a canopy bed, a bathroom made of gold and silence. But it didn't feel like home. She sat on the edge of the bed, pulled her locket out from under her sweater, and stared at it. What was she doing here? Was it worth the humiliation? Was it worth the fear? She wasn't sure. But something inside her, some tiny voice, whispered that she hadn't seen the worst of this house yet. Not even close. Downstairs, in his private study, Ethan stared at the fireplace, untouched whiskey in his hand. He didn't know why her words had cut through the ice, why she'd gotten under his skin. She was just supposed to be the act, the protest. But there was something in her fire, something in her pain that mirrored his own. She wasn't like Savannah, or Victoria, or the world he was raised in. She was raw, and she was dangerous. That night, in the dark silence of Hawthorne Manor, two souls stared at separate ceilings, lost in the same questions. What are we doing? How did we get here? And when will this lie become something real? The rain returned on the third night. Not a storm, but the slow, persistent kind of rain that crawled down windows like tears that had nowhere else to go. Sky couldn't sleep. She'd tried. She'd laid in the oversized bed, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that felt like clouds dipped in silence. But her body wouldn't relax. Her muscles were tense, her skin prickling. The house was too quiet. And in the quiet, the dreams came. They came like fire, like screaming, like that name, Lily. The woman's voice was everywhere and nowhere, echoing through smoke and flame. A melody that hurt to remember, a scream that pierced her chest. Sky sat bolt upright, drenched in sweat. Her breath was ragged, her hands shaking. The room was still, but something felt off. She glanced at the door. It was cracked open. She always closed it. She pushed the covers off and stepped out of bed, her feet cold against the marble floor. She walked to the door, hesitated, then opened it fully. The hallway stretched out before her, empty, dark, but she knew she hadn't left it open. Someone had been there, watching. She didn't know. She closed the door again and locked it this time, then turned to the mirror. The girl who looked back at her wasn't just tired. She was scared. The next morning, Sky wandered the East Wing in search of something familiar. Anything. But every hallway looked the same. Ornate, sterile, untouchable. The entire mansion was like a museum curated for ghosts. As she turned a corner, she nearly bumped into someone. "Oh, sorry," she muttered. The girl smiled softly. "You must be Sky. I'm Emma, Ethan's sister." Sky blinked. Emma looked nothing like Victoria. Her smile was warm, her hair wild, her clothes soft and mismatched like she didn't care about impressing anyone. "Hi," Sky said. "Didn't mean to trespass." Emma laughed. "This whole house feels like a crime scene." "Don't worry." They walked side by side through the corridor. Emma gestured to the West Wing. "Avoid that side at night. Victoria likes to pace when she's angry." "Does she pace often?" "Every day since you arrived." Sky smirked. "Then I'm doing something right." Emma glanced at her. "Ethan likes you." Sky's stomach tightened. "It's not like that." "You sure?" "I'm here to play a part. That's it." Emma paused. "You're a better actress than Savannah was." She didn't act. She belonged here. Emma stopped walking. "No one belongs here," she said quietly. Sky swallowed hard. She wanted to ask why Emma looked so sad when she said that. But something stopped her. That night, the nightmares returned. More vivid, more violent. The flames were real this time. She could smell smoke, hear footsteps. A woman was running, holding her hand. "Lily, don't look back. Keep running." Then the image shifted. A bedroom, a mirror, a tiny heart-shaped locket hanging from a jewelry tree. Her locket. She woke up screaming. Ethan was at her door in seconds. She didn't know how he got there so fast. Maybe he hadn't been sleeping either. "Are you okay?" he asked, breathless. She couldn't speak. He stepped into the room, closing the door gently behind him. "Sky." She looked at him. Really looked. "I think I'm remembering something," she whispered. "Or someone." He walked toward her slowly, careful not to get too close. "Tell me." "There's fire. Always fire. And a voice. A woman calling me Lily." Ethan stiffened. She didn't notice. "And I see this room. Not this room, but one that feels like mine. A little mirror. A locket. But new. Untouched." She grabbed her locket from around her neck. "This one. It's mine. But I don't know where it came from." Ethan sat on the edge of the armchair, visibly tense. "Do you remember anything else?" "No," she said. "Only that it feels like I'm missing something huge. Something that was taken from me." She looked up at him. "Do you think I'm crazy?" No, he didn't say it right away. But when he did, it was with a kind of protectiveness she hadn't expected from him. "I think something happened to you. A long time ago. And I think this house is waking it up." She nodded. "I'm scared. So am I." They didn't touch. But something passed between them anyway. 2 floors below, Victoria stood outside the study, listening. Her fingers trembled as she held a glass of scotch she didn't sip from. She had seen the locket before. She had given it to Lily Harrington for her 6th birthday. Victoria's throat tightened. It couldn't be. Lily had died in that fire. That house had burned to ash. She'd made sure of it. She stepped back, shaking now. If Sky remembered who she really was, everything would collapse. The next morning, Victoria entered Richard's study uninvited. He glanced up, annoyed. "Yes. She's not just some girl Ethan picked from the street." "I know." Victoria blinked. "You what?" "I had her background checked. She has no birth certificate, no school records until age 11, no foster family who claims her. Just a blank space before a group home in Long Beach." Victoria sat, stunned. "She's Lily." "I said she might be." "No," Victoria whispered. "She is. I gave her that locket. I gave it to Lily before the fire." Richard's eyes went dark. "Then we have a problem. She can't find out." "She will. Then we bury it again." Richard looked at her. And for the first time in years, he looked afraid. "Not this time, Victoria. If she's who you say she is, we can't control her." Victoria stood. Cold rage simmered in her voice. "Then we destroy her before she remembers." Sky sat alone in the corner of the room she'd been given. Green walls, satin curtains, and 2 many mirrors. She stared at herself in one of them, chewing the inside of her cheek. Her jeans were faded. Her hoodie old. Her hair still damp from the shower she'd taken to clear the nightmares. The door creaked. Emma walked in carrying 3 dresses over her shoulder like they were armor. "Tonight's the gala," she said gently. "Mother insisted you come." Sky didn't move. "I'm not a show pony," she muttered. "She didn't invite you to honor you. She invited you to humiliate you." "I know." Emma sat beside her. "She wants you to walk in there looking like what they expect. A girl from the street who doesn't know how to hold a fork." Sky looked at the dresses. "And what if I don't go?" Emma smiled. "Then she wins before the night even begins." Sky looked into the mirror again. She didn't see a fighter. She saw a fraud. A girl who didn't belong in satin and chandeliers. But somewhere deep inside, something flickered. A distant part of her, the one that had survived the fire, the cold, the hunger, lifted its head. "Help me," she said quietly. Emma grinned. 3 hours later, a Rolls-Royce pulled up to the front steps of the Los Angeles Museum of Modern Art, where the Hawthorns were hosting their annual Winter Hearts Charity Gala. Photographers screamed. Cameras flashed. Socialites in jewels climbed the steps like queens. And then the world stopped. A woman stepped out of the car. She wore a floor-length black gown, satin hugging every curve with the elegance of old Hollywood. Her hair, swept into a low chignon, revealed her long neck and silver teardrop earrings. Her face was bare, no heavy makeup, just her. Real, radiant, relentless. It was Sky. The cameras turned. The murmurs started. "Who is that? Is that Ethan's wife?" "No." That can't be the girl from the tabloids. Inside, Savannah nearly choked on her champagne when she saw Sky walking through the entrance like she owned the building. Victoria's smile froze. Her grip tightened on her wine glass. Sky walked in slowly, deliberately. Her heels clicked like a warning bell on the marble floor. When her eyes locked with Victoria's, she smiled. "I hope I'm not underdressed," she said, voice sweet like poison. "You clean up adequately," Victoria replied. Savannah stepped forward, her laugh sharp and fake. "Wow, Sky, you look shockingly human." Sky leaned in. "And you look threatened." Savannah's mouth dropped, but Sky was already turning. She walked toward Ethan, who hadn't taken his eyes off her since the moment she entered. He was in a black tuxedo, bow tie slightly loose, eyes wide with disbelief. He stepped toward her, mouth opening to say something. But words failed. She stopped a few inches in front of him. "You're staring," she said. He stopped. Swallowed. "Tried again. You're not what I expected." She arched a brow. Disappointed. He shook his head slowly. Terrified. She smirked. "Good." And for the first time, he didn't see her as a transaction. He saw her as a threat to every wall he had built. The woman in front of him was not broken. She was becoming. The gala played out in waves of wine and whispers. Sky floated between conversations, guided by Emma's subtle signals. She held her own. She didn't stumble over silverware or speak out of turn. In fact, she said very little. It was smarter to listen. She heard board members mock her in low tones. Investors speculate. Socialites smile to her face and insult her back. But Sky didn't react. She watched. She learned. And then the auction began. Ethan stepped on stage to speak about the cause. "Housing for the homeless in downtown LA, I've learned," he said slowly, his voice carrying weight, "that not all people without homes are lost. Some of them are the strongest people you'll ever meet. Some of them know more about survival than any of us." He looked at Sky. His voice cracked just enough to make it real. "And sometimes, they're the ones who remind you what it means to be alive." Silence. A moment. And then, thunderous applause. Sky's eyes shone with something like gratitude. Or maybe sorrow. She didn't know. Later that night, she stepped out onto the museum's terrace, needing air. The city lights shimmered below. The cool wind kissed her bare shoulders. Ethan followed her minutes later. They stood side by side in silence. "You were brilliant in there," he said softly. "I was terrified. No one could tell. I couldn't breathe. You didn't blink." She turned to face him. "Why did you say that?" "On stage." "Because it was true." She looked down. "This started as a deal. I know, but it doesn't feel like one anymore." He stepped closer. "And that scares me." She looked up, eyes wide. "Because I don't know who I am." And there it was. The weight. The truth. The pain. He reached for her hand, but didn't touch it. "Then let's find out together." Inside, Victoria watched from the shadows. Her hands trembling again. Her empire cracking beneath the weight of a girl she thought she could destroy. But now the world was falling in love with her. And that made her dangerous. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy, gray clouds curling like smoke around the Hawthorne estate, as if the house itself was exhaling secrets it could no longer keep. Sky stood by the window of her room, her bare feet pressing into the cold floor, arms wrapped around her waist. Outside, the garden glittered with water droplets, every rose bowing beneath the weight of a storm. She understood that feeling. Since the gala, everything had changed. People looked at her differently. Whispers followed her through the halls. Staff that once refused to make eye contact now offered shy nods. Even Victoria's stares had changed, from disdain to suspicion. But none of it haunted her more than Ethan's silence. He hadn't spoken to her, really spoken, since that night. And that terrified her more than anything else. Because she couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at her. Like she was no longer part of a deal. Like she was something else. Something real. A knock at the door startled her. She turned. Ethan stood in the hallway, hair damp, his expression unreadable. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said. "You're not," she lied. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then nodded. He stepped inside, glancing around the room like he didn't know what to do with his hands. "I thought we should talk," he said. "About the gala?" "About us." The words hung in the air like wet sheets on a clothesline. Too heavy to move, too intimate to ignore. Sky walked back to the window. "I was pretending," she said softly. "That's what I'm good at." "You weren't pretending. I was surviving. I know. A pause. She turned to him slowly. Then what were you doing, Ethan? Up there on that stage, talking like you meant it. He didn't answer right away. I don't know, he admitted. Something broke open in me that night, and I haven't been able to put it back. She swallowed hard. This isn't supposed to get complicated. I know. This isn't supposed to feel like, I know. And then, silence. He stepped closer. She didn't move. You changed something, he whispered. You scare me, she said back. I should. His hand reached up, slow, unsure, and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. His touch was light, reverent, not possessive, not demanding. Sky trembled. This was supposed to be a game. I don't think it ever was. Their eyes locked. She could smell his cologne, something smoky with a trace of citrus, and for a second, she felt her knees weaken. But before either could move, the knock came again. This time at the front door. Footsteps echoed. Raised voices. Ethan blinked. Stay here. He left without another word. Sky stared at the empty space where he'd just been, and something in her chest twisted. Downstairs, Savannah stood in the marble foyer like she owned the place, her coat dripping rain onto the floor, her smile razor-sharp. Surprised to see me, she said as Ethan descended the stairs. I thought you were in Paris, he said flatly. I came back. Because I missed you. You shouldn't have. Savannah took a step forward. I heard the charity gala was quite the spectacle. Your little bride made a splash. Ethan's jaw tightened. What do you want, Savannah? Answers. To what? She stepped closer, pulling out a folder from her purse. Thin, white, tied with a red ribbon. To who she really is. He froze. I hired someone, Savannah continued, her voice casual, cruel. I couldn't help myself. A background check, some digging. And Ethan? She's not who she says she is. She never said who she was, he snapped. But she's been hiding something. No birth records. No school files before age 11. Just darkness. She held the folder out to him. Want to see what's inside? No, afraid of what you'll find. I'm afraid of what you'll do with it. Savannah's face hardened. She's going to ruin you. You know that, right? She's already halfway there. And you're falling for her like some idiot in a romance novel. Ethan didn't blink. Maybe I am. Savannah's smile dropped. She's not one of us. Exactly. Upstairs, Sky stood at the top of the staircase, listening. She couldn't hear everything, but she heard enough. And when she slipped back into her room and locked the door behind her, her hands were shaking. She opened the locket around her neck, the one she had never been able to force open before. But this time, click. Inside was a tiny photo, water-damaged, faded. A man, a woman, and a little girl. The girl had Sky's eyes. Her knees gave out. She fell to the floor, clutching the locket to her chest. I'm not Sky, she whispered. And for the first time, the name came to her mouth without hesitation. I'm Lily. The past doesn't knock. It breaks down the door. Sky sat at the edge of the bed, the small photo from her locket trembling in her hands. The image was faded, almost lost to time. But the little girl in the middle, with wild dark hair and bright gray eyes, was unmistakably her. She was Lily Grace Harrington. The name tasted unfamiliar, like a language she used to speak and forgot how. The fire hadn't just taken her family. It had taken her identity, her truth, her history. She was shaking. Who were they? Her real parents. Were they kind? Were they cruel? Why did they die? Why had no one come looking for her? The only thing she remembered was heat, screaming, a woman's voice telling her to run. And then nothing. She had to know more. She had to know everything. She stood up, heart racing, and walked toward the one person in the house who might actually help her. Emma. Emma sat in her studio, music playing softly in the background. She was sketching, charcoal-stained fingers gliding across the paper, when Sky burst through the door. I need to talk to you, Sky said, breathless. Emma turned, alarmed. Sky? Are you okay? No, she said. I don't think I ever have been. Sky dropped the photo in front of her. Emma picked it up. Her eyes widened. Who is this? That's me, Sky whispered. That's Lily Harrington. Emma froze. I thought the name sounded familiar, she said slowly. My mom, Victoria, used to talk about the Harringtons. Old money. A family wiped out in a fire. She didn't just talk about them, Sky said, voice like glass cracking. She knew them. Emma stood slowly. What are you saying? I think Victoria had something to do with it. I think she wanted that family gone. Emma went pale. Come with me, she said. Now. They descended into the library. a place Emma rarely visited because, as she said, it smells too much like secrets. She guided Sky past rows of books and cabinets until they reached a locked drawer in Richard's private file case. Emma pulled out a hairpin, jimmied the lock open, and dug out a file labeled Harrington Estate. Incident report, confidential. Sky's breath caught. Emma opened it. Inside, black and white photos of a burned house, fragments of jewelry recovered from the ash, and a handwritten note. Harrington House, confirmed lost. Girl's body unrecovered. No witnesses. No press involvement. Victoria's request. Possible inheritance complications. Richard suggests sealing the estate via silent transfer. What does this mean? Sky asked, her voice trembling. Emma stared at the words, horror in her eyes. It means my parents knew. Knew what? That you were alive. The air in the library turned heavier than stone. Sky sat down, the papers falling from her lap. So they let me disappear. No, Emma said, voice cracking. They made you disappear. Sky blinked through tears. Why? Emma reached into the file and pulled out a second folder. It was older, nearly falling apart. Inside, a collection of letters between Victoria Hawthorne and Charles Harrington. Dear Charles, you promised me you would leave her. You said your daughter would never know the truth. Oh my God, Emma whispered. Victoria was having an affair. With your father. Sky felt the air rush from her lungs. She had a reason to hate your family. A reason to erase them. The fire wasn't an accident. Sky stood, swaying. She had come into this house as a ghost. And now she had a name, a history, a family, and a murderer. Meanwhile, upstairs, Richard poured himself a drink. The study was dark, but he didn't turn on the light. He didn't need to. He knew the shadows. He lived in them. Victoria walked in without knocking. She's digging, she said. I know. She found the photo. I said I know. Victoria approached slowly. Her face was sharper now. Less beauty, more blade. We can still control the narrative. We say she's a fraud. A scam artist. We leak something to the press. Stop. She blinked. I said stop, Richard repeated. He turned to her, eyes cold, voice colder. You set the fire, didn't you? Victoria didn't flinch. He stepped closer. You didn't just want the woman gone. You wanted the child gone. She was a stain, Victoria said simply. A product of betrayal. Of weakness. He loved her more than he ever loved me. She was 6 years old. Children grow. They become threats. Richard stared at her, disgust, and something like guilt crawling up his throat. I forced my son to marry her, he whispered. I forced him to marry the very girl your lies tried to erase. She's just a girl. She's a Harrington. Victoria's eyes narrowed. And now, Richard said. He poured the rest of the drink down the sink. Now we let the truth rise. Later that night, Ethan returned from a meeting to find Sky in his room. She was sitting in the dark, photo in hand, papers spread across his bed. I know who I am, she said. He closed the door. I'm Lily Grace Harrington. My parents died in a fire set by your stepmother, covered up by your father. He didn't speak. She looked up at him. Tell me the truth, Ethan. Did you know? No, he said, but I should have guessed. From the moment I saw you, I felt like I'd seen you before. Not just in the streets. Somewhere deeper. I was your childhood friend. His eyes widened. I remember. A girl with a toy horse. She wore a green ribbon in her hair. She used to chase fireflies. Sky nodded slowly. That was me. He sat beside her, his hand brushing hers. I'm sorry, he whispered. I don't want your pity. It's not pity. I don't know who I'm more angry at, your parents, or myself for not remembering. He touched her cheek, gently. You remembered enough. She pulled away. This changes everything. No, it reveals everything. Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither one looked away. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the Hawthorne estate, a deceptively peaceful sound for what was unfolding inside its walls. Sky stood in the center of Richard's private study, eyes scanning over the worn leather-bound folder Emma had just pulled from the hidden drawer behind the built-in bookshelves. A single name burned through the label, the Harrington Trust. Final amendments inside. The yellowing papers trembled in Sky's fingers as she read the opening lines aloud, her voice hoarse. This document certifies that in the event of my death, my estate, holdings, shares, and corporate interests within Hawthorne Global Industries, comprising 40% of total assets, are to be transferred in full to my daughter, Lily Grace Harrington. Silence. Ethan stepped forward, his voice slow, as if each word carried weight too heavy to hold. 40% of my father's company? Emma answered, her face pale. Your father and Lily's did a silent partnership years ago. It was never disclosed publicly. But this is real. Sky's hands began to shake. She was no longer just a guest. She was an owner, an heir, a threat. No, she whispered. This can't be right. Ethan gently took the papers from her and read for himself. His brows furrowed, his jaw tightening with every line. It's notarized, witnessed, dated the week before the fire. Sky stepped back. I don't want this. Emma looked at her. But you deserve it. No, I didn't come here for power. I wanted to know who I was. And now you do, Emma said gently. You're the girl who lived. And you're the woman who owns almost half of the company that tried to erase you. From the hallway came the sharp click of heels. Victoria. She stood at the threshold, her smile brittle. Well, she said coolly, isn't this touching? Sky turned slowly, fire blooming in her chest. You knew? Victoria didn't deny it. Of course I knew. I was the one who made it disappear. You destroyed my family, Sky said, voice trembling. You buried me like I was nothing. Victoria crossed the room with calm, predatory grace. You were nothing. A bastard child. A stain on Charles Harrington's legacy. Don't talk about my father, Sky snapped. Victoria stopped inches away from her. You want justice? Take it. Call your lawyer. Announce it to the world. See how far you get before they tear you apart. You think society will kneel at your feet? You're still that same girl they dragged off the street. No, Ethan cut in. She's more than that. She's everything you're not. Victoria turned to him, her smile hardening. And what are you now, Ethan? The puppet in a play you don't understand. I'm the man who finally sees who he's standing next to. Sky looked between them, heart pounding. This was no longer a lie. It was war. The next morning, Sky stood before the boardroom table at Hawthorne Global. Across from her sat 12 men in suits and one woman, each of them stunned as Emma unrolled the will and placed it center stage. My client, Miss Lily Grace Harrington, is here to formally acknowledge her inheritance, Emma said, her voice firm. Effective immediately, she claims her 40% stake. The room exploded. Shouting, arguing, disbelief. This is insane. Forgery. She's an imposter. Sky waited. When the noise finally died down, she stood. I didn't ask for this. I didn't plan it. But I won't run from it either. My father trusted Richard Hawthorne. He believed this company would protect his legacy. She met each set of eyes. I'm here to make sure that legacy doesn't rot under corruption, silence, and cowardice. The room fell into stunned silence. Even the loudest critic couldn't find the words. Richard stood in the shadows of the hall, listening. When Sky emerged, they faced each other in silence. You knew this day would come, she said. Yes. You let her do it. Yes. Sky stared at him. Why? He exhaled, slowly. Because I thought power was more important than people. And I was wrong. Her eyes narrowed. I don't want your remorse. I'm not offering it. I'm offering a choice. What choice? You can destroy me, he said. With this. With what you now own. Or, he looked away. You can lead. Sky blinked, stunned. You want me to take your place? He looked up. I want someone worthy to take it. And you are the only one left. She laughed, bitter and disbelieving. You think I'll work with the people who killed my family? No, Richard said. I think you'll rise above them. That night, Sky sat alone in the garden. The papers were signed. The transfer was real. Lily Grace Harrington now held the weight of two legacies, one born in fire, the other in betrayal. Ethan approached, silent as always. He didn't speak. He just sat beside her. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, she said. You are. I feel like I'm becoming someone else. You're becoming yourself. She turned to him, tears in her eyes. What if I lose the girl I was? Ethan reached out. Then let me help you find her again. She rested her head against his shoulder. And in that moment, power didn't matter. Only the truth did. And for the first time, Lily Grace Harrington wasn't afraid of it. The house was too quiet. It had been days since the boardroom bombshell. The estate that once hummed with luxury and control now buzzed with unease. Whispers, long stares, unspoken dread. Sky could feel it. It slithered in the halls, lingered in the corners, coiled beneath every chandelier. She didn't sleep, couldn't eat. Something inside her told her that danger was near, but from where, she wasn't sure. Victoria had disappeared for 2 days. Not physically, no. She still floated through the manor like a duchess in mourning, hair perfect, posture stiff. But something in her eyes had vanished. Control. Victoria had lost everything. Her husband had chosen Sky's truth over her reputation. Her stepson had chosen love over lineage. The board no longer feared her. The media had stopped quoting her. And Lily Grace Harrington now owned the name she tried to erase. That was the real crime. And it would have to be corrected. That evening, a dinner was arranged. Victoria's idea. Family only, she said softly, her voice like velvet wrapped around a blade. To heal the wounds between us. Sky knew better, but she agreed. Not because she trusted Victoria, but because she wasn't afraid anymore. I've already walked through fire, she told Emma. I survived it once. I'll survive it again. Emma didn't smile. She just hugged her tighter. The table was set for 6. Richard, Victoria, Ethan, Emma, Sky, and as always, silence. Crystal glasses sparkled. Silverware gleamed. The roast was perfect, the wine rich. It felt too perfect. Victoria sat at the head of the table. Her smile was painted on, her eyes dull, but she moved with precision, elegance, and control, just like always. Sky watched her closely. She barely touched her food, but she poured everyone's wine, including Sky's, especially Sky's. Ethan leaned in, whispered, "You okay?" Sky nodded once. "Are you?" "No." She took the wine glass in her hand, then paused. A whisper in her mind. "Don't." She placed it back down. Victoria's eye twitched. Emma suddenly stood. I'm not hungry," she said. "I'll get some air." Victoria's smile didn't falter. "Of course, dear." Emma left, rushed, panicked. And then Sky gasped. The world tilted. The room blurred. Her throat clenched. Ethan's voice, "Sky." She couldn't speak. Her vision dimmed. Then black. Sky collapsed. Chaos erupted. "Scott." Ethan dropped to her side. "Call an ambulance." Emma burst back into the room, tears already falling. "She drank it." "She didn't," Ethan shouted. "She barely touched it." Emma ran to the table, snatched the glass, sniffed. Then, "It's poisoned." Richard turned to Victoria, his face drained. "No," she didn't move, didn't blink, didn't deny it. "You tried to kill her?" Richard whispered. Victoria stood slowly. "I tried to end this lie." Ethan screamed, "She's your husband's daughter. She's nothing." Emma pulled out her phone, her voice trembling. "I recorded you. Just now. Everything you said." Victoria turned to her slowly. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did." The hospital lights were too bright. Sky lay unconscious. For in her arm, heart monitor beeping steady but slow. Ethan hadn't left her side. Not for 1 second. He held her hand. Whispered stories. Apologies. Promises. "Stay with me," he begged. "Please. I just found you." Her fingers didn't move. Outside the room, Richard gave a full confession to the police. Victoria was arrested on the spot. No handcuffs. Just shame. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But when they took her away, she looked back once at the manor and saw the walls she built finally collapse. Hours later, Sky stirred. Ethan jumped to his feet. "Sky." She blinked. Tried to sit. Winced. "Don't move," he whispered. "You're okay. You're okay." Her lips parted. Barely audible. "You stayed?" He nodded, swallowing a sob. "I'll never leave again." She closed her eyes. Not in pain, but in peace. The hospital lights were too bright. The air too clean. The world too quiet. Sky opened her eyes slowly. Pain hit first, dull and deep, buried in her side. Then confusion. Then memory. The dinner. The wine. The floor rushing toward her face. She gasped. And beside her, already on his feet, already reaching, was Ethan. "Sky," he breathed, choking on her name like it was the only thing he'd ever believed in. "You're awake." She blinked up at him. His eyes were red, his face unshaven, his clothes wrinkled from nights sleeping in a hospital chair. "How long?" she croaked. 3 days, he whispered. They weren't sure you'd wake up." She tried to sit up. He pressed her back gently. No, just rest. You're safe now." Safe. She didn't know what that word meant anymore. Her voice cracked. "Victoria? Arrested?" Emma recorded everything. Richard gave a full statement. "She's done." Sky turned her face away and wept. Later that night, when the room had emptied and the machines beeped quietly in the dark, Ethan sat beside her again. He didn't speak. She did. "I thought I'd die with lies in my mouth," she whispered. "But I didn't." He looked at her. "No, you didn't. I'm Lily Grace Harrington." "You are." She turned to face him, her voice trembling. "But I'm still her too. The girl who slept on concrete, who survived things I can't say out loud." "You don't have to choose," Ethan said. "You're both. You're all of it." Her eyes filled again. "You once told me this was a deal, that you needed a wife to piss off your father." "I did. And now?" Ethan leaned forward, took her hand carefully in his, and kissed her fingers. "I need a wife," he said softly, "because I'm in love." Her breath caught. "I'm not the same girl you met." "And I'm not the same man," he replied. "You made me better." A beat passed. Then she smiled through tears. It started as a lie. He smiled too. But it became the only truth I've ever known. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a ring. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't heavy with diamonds. It was a single emerald in a silver band. Her birthstone. "My mom's," he said. "She wore it when she married my dad. It never fit Victoria." Sky stared at it, unable to speak. "I don't want this to be a show," Ethan whispered. "Not for revenge. Not for press. Not for pity. I want to marry you because when I thought I'd lost you, my whole life disappeared with you." "I don't deserve you," she whispered. He laughed, soft and broken. "I don't deserve you." She took the ring in trembling hands and slid it onto her finger. "I do," she said. The ceremony was quiet. No press, no cameras, just a garden chapel, sunlight, and trembling vows. Emma stood as maid of honor. Richard, humbled, walked Lily down the aisle. And when Ethan saw her, dressed in simple ivory silk, her hair loose and real, her smile full of sorrow and joy, he cried. Not from regret, but from relief. Lily stood before him, no longer pretending, no longer afraid. And when she said, "I do," the entire world paused to listen. That night, after the guests had gone, after the cake had been sliced and the music faded, Ethan and Lily stood in the empty dance hall. Just the two of them. He took her hand. "Dance with me." "There's no music. There doesn't need to be." He pulled her close. And they moved, slow and quiet, barefoot, hearts pounding in time. Lily rested her head on his chest. "I don't want to be rich," she whispered. "I know. I just want to be whole. You already are." She closed her eyes. And for the first time since the fire, since the streets, since the lie began, she believed him. 6 months later, the world was different. Not louder, not softer, but clearer. For the first time in years, Lily Grace Harrington could look in the mirror and recognize the woman staring back. Not because she had the Harrington name again. Not because she wore elegant clothes or sat on boards or signed checks with a gold pen. But because she had survived. She stood in the center of the old Harrington estate, what remained of it. The walls had been rebuilt, the gardens regrown. The fire had stolen nearly everything, but not the ground beneath her feet, not the memories buried in the roots. And now, it would become something more. A sanctuary. She walked through the new lobby of the Lily Foundation, a beautiful, airy shelter dedicated to women and children escaping poverty, homelessness, and violence. The staff were kind, the furniture soft, the walls painted in warm yellows and pale lilacs. But the first room was her favorite, a memorial garden, where wild lilies now bloomed beneath a large stone engraved with 5 names, hers and her parents', the maid who saved her life, and the social worker who gave her a new name when she had no past. It wasn't for show. It was for healing. She knelt among the flowers, picked a single bloom, pressed it to her chest. "Mom, Dad," she whispered. "We're home." Behind her, she heard footsteps. Ethan, still her husband, still her anchor, still her impossible miracle. He crouched beside her, didn't speak, just took her hand. She leaned into him. "Did you bring the letters?" He nodded and handed her a small wooden box. Inside were envelopes from the first girls the foundation had helped. A 12-year-old who escaped a trafficking ring. A mother with 2 sons fleeing domestic abuse. A trans teen kicked out of her home, now studying for college. All of them said the same thing. "Thank you." She began to cry, because she had given them shelter. But they had given her purpose. Later that evening, Lily sat on a bench near the old garden where she used to play as a child. It had been restored. New swing, new path, new fence. But the air still smelled the same. Of roses, of wind, of something sacred. Emma walked up, holding 2 coffees. Still like it black? Lily laughed. God, yes. They sipped in silence. Emma smiled. You've changed. Better or worse? Neither, Emma said. You're just finally whole. Lily looked at her. And you? CEO of Hawthorne Global now. Emma rolled her eyes. Don't remind me. I wore heels for 6 days straight. My ankles hate me. They both laughed. But then, silence returned. Comfortable. Honest. I miss her, Lily said softly. I don't, Emma replied. And that's how I know I've forgiven her. Lily nodded. Victoria was in prison. Sentenced for arson, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. Savannah, too, had finally faced justice, bribery, fraud, extortion. Her deals with private investigators and reporters had caught up to her. Richard? Retired. Humbled. Alone, but no longer cruel. He'd visited Lily once. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just sat with her and cried. Sometimes that was enough. That night, Ethan and Lily returned home. Not to the Hawthorne estate, not to a penthouse in the city, but to a modest house just outside of town. A porch swing, 2 mugs of tea, a dog named Marigold sleeping by the fire. As they curled together on the couch, Lily traced the lines of his hand. I used to be afraid of silence, she whispered. Why? Because I thought it meant I was alone. Ethan kissed her forehead. You'll never be alone again. Morning came. Bright. Soft. Honest. Lily stood in the garden, barefoot, wearing a white linen dress. Ethan walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. She looked to the sun, to everything that had to burn for this to grow. She turned to face him and smiled. I found myself. She kissed him. I found love. He kissed her back. I found home. And together, hand in hand, they walked toward the sunrise. The end was not an end. It was a beginning. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't leave without letting us know. Tell us in the comments what moment broke you or healed you. Don't forget to give this video a like if you felt the emotion, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story full of drama, love, and redemption. Your support means everything.